Is writing going to change your life? Is it? I'm not really talking about if I get a big book deal, am I going to be able to buy a bigger house and, be famous and go to book signings? I'm not talking about that kind of change. I'm talking about personal transformation. Is being a writer going to change how you feel about yourself? Is it going to change what kind of person you are? These are really interesting questions. And it's what I want to talk about today because I've been meditating upon this idea of pursuing mastery as a writer as a life changing journey. And I'm very grateful to my Path of the Storyteller students for putting this idea in my head. So I'm going to explain a little bit about how that happened in a minute, but that is our topic today. And I am going to share with you, before we're done today, 5 different ways that I think that the answer to this question might be yes, that there might be a journey of change in store for anyone who undertakes serious study of writing fiction. Okay. So if that's you, buckle up. We are going to have a journey of transformation ahead. In case you're new to this live stream, let me introduce myself. My name is Mary Rosewood. I am best known as a writer of middle grade fiction, which is a category that I just love. I've also written some YA, and I've also written for the theater, and I've written screenplays, and I've done improv, and I've performed as an actor. So I've had a very long and interesting and transformative, there's that word, our theme today, a transformative journey in the storytelling arts. And I like to mention that because I think it's important when we reflect on how our journey through the practice of storytelling may have shaped our lives. So I'm going to look forward to hearing, those of you who are here live, how it may be shaping yours even as we speak. In addition to being a writer, I am also the founder of the Path of the Storyteller program, which I am going to mention also today. Since the Path of the Storyteller is really what we're talking about today. We're talking about the journey that writers take themselves. The Path of the Storyteller program is it's a beautiful community. It's my own platform where I teach and mentor writers. We are going to be opening enrollment again next week. I'm saying this right now in July. Let's see, what's the date? It's July 12th. So it's July 12th, 2023. If you're watching now, make sure you're on my mailing list so you don't miss the news about when enrollment starts. One fun way to get on my mailing list is to go download a free collection of writing prompts that I have created for writers who might want a little fun challenge. There were 30 writing prompts in the collection, and you can get them totally free. You just put your email address in the box when you go to this link, www.pathofthestoryteller.com/challenge. You will get them emailed to you in a nice little workbook format. And what's special about these writing prompts is that they are designed according to the journey of story structure, the transformative journey of story. So if you're not 100% sure you even know what that means, these writing prompts will give you a little bit of a crash course in story structure. And I think you will enjoy that and you will learn something from it. I am going to say a quick hello to Hillary, who's here and already posting in the comments. And I can see that there are quite a few of you here as well live. I want to thank you for participating live. This is a really personal topic. So if you feel like you want to post comments, share from your journey of transformation, whether in Path of the Storyteller as a program or in the rest of your writing practice or training, we would love to hear it. I love when you participate live. If you're watching on the replay, post it in the comments and be part of the conversation. That is always a really great thing. All right, let me dive into this idea of how writing, being a writer, committing to a journey of growth as a writer actually can be quite transformative for us as individuals. And the first thing I want to do is I want to kind of get out of the way the low-hanging fruit here, like the obvious things. Yes, when we write fiction, We have to, cultivate our imaginations. We have to be great observers of the human condition. We have to tell the truth about what it feels like to be human. We have to open our senses to the world and be present so that we can observe things with enough nuance to be able to depict them in our fiction. We have to think empathetically about complicated characters, perhaps characters who are capable of doing bad, perhaps even evil things. We are sort of responsible for being able to enter imaginatively into the world of our books. And therefore, does it make us better, more imaginative, more empathetic people? Yes, blah, 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 blah. That actually is the easy stuff. That's the easy stuff. And not that it's trivial. I think all of that is quite important. But those kinds of topics, can we be empathetic to people that we maybe have a judgment about, or, what is the truth of being human in the end, and all of that stuff? Like, these are abstract questions. We can deal with questions like that in the abstract, in the realm of the intellect, in philosophy, for example. Like, philosophy treats these very same questions that we as fiction writers have to treat when we get in our, fiction writing mode. So they're not trivial questions. I'm not downplaying them, but they're not personal questions in the way that I want to talk about today. I am talking about what happens when you, as an individual, as someone with a desire to write, perhaps with a lifelong dream of being a writer, a successful writer, a published writer, a writer who has readers and is just sort of part of the community of writer, who's part of the lineage of storytellers, right? Who's one of the writers that people say, gosh, if I had to name my top, 10 favorite writers, that your name would be on that list. What does it mean personally when we start to entertain the thought that maybe that's what we want out of our lives, that that's really core to who we are? It's a big part of the plan of our life journey. What does that do to us? So, and before I begin, as I said in the intro here, I have sort of 5 different areas of exploration that will be really stirred up by this journey. But I want to tell you, first of all, why I'm thinking about it today. And it's because the Path of the Storyteller program is going to be open for new students. I'm going to be, let's see, it's Wednesday now, so I'll probably be sending out an email on Monday, flinging open the doors to folks who might want to enter into this program. And so as part of the preparation for doing that, I was looking at the website and everything and making sure it was all up to date, because there are some really cool changes in the program this time around. You will, if you're on my mailing list, you'll find out all about those in emails. I won't spend our live stream time talking about that. But as part of updating my website and the Path of the Storyteller materials, I went through all of the testimonials that I got from my recent crops of students, and I was so touched by them. They were lovely, and I'm so grateful when my students take the time to offer their feedback on the program. And I know that for those of you out there who are writers, maybe seeking training or mentorship, what I have to say is important, but what my students have to say is in a way more important, right? Because that's how we often, in this world of Amazon reviews and Goodreads reviews, like, word of mouth is really significant. When other people have had a great experience, it means a lot to us when we ourselves are trying to make a decision about whether we want to dive into that experience too. So I'm really grateful. And I was reading them and I was adding some of them to the website. And it was just a really nice, as you can imagine, a really good feeling for me. But I kept noticing this phrase of life changing. And there were a number of testimonials that had come in from students who talked about having more confidence as writers and, feeling like they had good technique now and they had a framework and, like all of the good stuff. But a number of them, like not just one or two, but a number of them used this phrase, this program was life changing, not just writing changing, but life changing. So that's the kind of thing that sets me on like a whole mental exploration. I have been thinking ever since, like, what does it mean to actually be life changing, right? It's not so much about their drafts or their revision technique or whether they've got an agent now or whether they finished a draft or revising confidently. Like all of that stuff is fantastic. I love to hear about it. But life changing, I mean, that is just strong talk. So that's where I'm sort of coming from emotionally today. So we're gonna go kind of deep. If you guys will want to take a little adventure, a little transformative adventure with me in this conversation. So I'm thinking about what it means to commit to a journey of transformation as a writer. And so this is not, Path of the Storyteller is not like a trivial program like come on in and I'll show you how to write a query letter. We cover lots and lots of stuff, but it is a journey. It is designed to help writers feel more ambitious about what they're capable of and then give them the tools to achieve that higher ambition. I guess that's one way to put it, right? And so part of this idea of taking a journey toward mastery means that you have to sort of situate your sense of self about what it means to contemplate yourself achieving that. So the first thing that I would say to you all about how taking a journey of development as a writer is really going to examine within you and ask you to change is your sense of your own worth. I'm going to unpack that a little bit, right? And I'm going to try to stay focused on writing, but you yourself may find that this resonates in other aspects of your lives. So if you're going to take a journey of mastery as a writer, that means like making some kind of commitment to change, that you have come to some point in your work that you realize you need help, that what you've got going on is not sufficient. You haven't managed to figure it all out on your own. So there's a kind of humility involved in that, a kind of self-awareness involved in that. And also all of the feelings that get triggered for those of us who think that we should be able to figure things out on our own. And we realize that maybe we've been working really hard on our writing. We've been writing, we've been reading craft books, maybe we've taken a couple of classes, whatever we have done. We read a ton of books in our genre, in that are sort of comparable to what we're doing. There are writers we admire. We think if we read them over and over again, like some of that special secret sauce is going to rub off on us. And then we get to a point where we realize that it hasn't worked, that somehow what we're doing is not achieving the improvement that we think it should be achieving, that we can still look at what we've got and what the writers we really admire and idolize have, and we can see that there's like a gap between it, and we don't know how to close that gap. Maybe we've sort of pushed through on our own, kind of learning by ear and picking up scraps of different pieces of advice in various places. And we've gotten to the point where maybe we have a manuscript that's done. We revised it as best we could. We started to query it. We sent it out and we got like either crickets, we got no response, or we got that kind of, response that's sort of more frustrating in a way than no response, which is that we just got passed on, it just got turned down and we're not told why. The vague reasons, right? The no thank you that has no reason, or the it's not right for us, or it just didn't grab me, like these sort of nothing burger responses that leave us so frustrated, right? So there's this kind of like almost like a crisis moment, when we realize it's not working. And I have to say, and I say this with so much love for all of my students, but all of you out there, even if I don't know you, I am so on the writer's side about all of this. I really, really understand how frustrating it can be. And I also know, because I hear from so many writers and I teach and mentor so many writers, that it is not at all unusual for a really smart, literate, kind of accomplished person to spend 10 years or more, so like just sort of struggling through this phase of, I'm trying to sort it out on my own. I have this belief that I should be able to figure this out on my own. I should be able to do this. And I'm not the kind of person that really likes to ask for help, but I don't think I should need the help. And they sort of go around in this circle, and it can go on for years or even decades. And there's this moment when that writer is like, well, I'm exhausted. I'm not getting the results that I want. And it's really, really tricky, right? So you have to get, in a sense, to take this journey of transformation, you have to get to that moment where you realize, I need help. I'm going to get serious about this. And I am admitting that I can't actually figure this out without some support. So there's a lot of, that's a deep feeling to go through. It may trigger other areas in your life where you feel that you're not entitled to help. You see, this is where this kind of goes into deeper waters. But to kind of keep this in the lane of how we develop as writers, yes, we get to that moment, right? We get to that sort of dark night of the soul when we realize we're not getting where we want to get and time is passing by. But we also have to get to that moment, which is really heavy, right? At the same time, still believing in ourselves enough that we are willing to invest in our potential, that we're willing to say, okay, I'm flat on my back now. I need a rescue. Like, I need someone to help me figure out how to actually do this thing. And I believe that it's worth it. I still have enough faith in myself to think that change is possible, that I still have the potential to learn, and that somebody who knows what they're talking about will be willing to help me. So I call this sort of threading the needle of self-worth, because on the one hand, we need a sufficient amount of humility to realize that it's time to ask for help, but we also need a sufficient amount of belief in ourselves and confidence to seek that help, to trust that it will be forthcoming, to believe that we're still capable of achieving our goals. So this is right. This is like really interesting. And I can tell you from experience that writers will sometimes get stuck on the other side of that for such a long time, either because they can never admit that they need help, or they admit it, but they can never kind of turn it around into enough self-belief to think, and so I'm going to go find it because I deserve to be helped. Somebody who is like worth asking for help is going to be willing to help me, right? So it's really tricky, right? It's really, really tricky. So think about that. That's sort of the first thing that we are going to be changed by, even as we sort of step onto the starting square of the game of the journey toward mastery. Like, even as we enter it, we've got to have this kind of complicated moment of personal development. So, oh gosh, Hillary's just posted in the chat. I'm going to share that, Hillary, because you're going to make me cry. Hillary's one of my beloved Path of the Storyteller students. So Hillary's saying, the program really did this for me. When I came in, I knew I didn't have what it took to write the books I wanted to write, and had started to feel I just had to settle for that. This is exactly what I'm talking about. That's so beautifully expressed, Hillary, that you can get to the point where you can see that you're not getting the traction and the improvement that you want, and you lose the faith that you will ever be able to get better. And you start, this phrase is so sort of fantastically evocative, had started to feel I just had to settle for that. That is so beautiful. And then, of course, we've got a journey of transformation to celebrate here, because after the program, Hillary says, I have the tools, I have support. It feels like a mountain to walk up step by step rather than an impossible ice wall. Still hard, but possible. I don't have to tell all of you that Hillary's a terrific writer, because look how she expressed that. The difference between a mountain that can be climbed step by step rather than an impossible ice wall, it's still a big undertaking, but one is possible and one is not possible. And Hillary has moved into the realm of the possible. Yay! I'm going to get very emotional in this talk, I can tell. All right, so sense of your own worth, that movement from I'm going to admit that I need help, and I'm not going to stay in the ice wall mode. I'm going to recognize that the change is possible. I'm going to go seek it. That is our first category of transformation. The second one, also kind of deep, and I think it might make some of you, consider your childhood experiences, because this is, in a sense, an imprint that I feel most of us get in childhood. What is my relationship to authority? What is my relationship to authority? So if you are a person, and I think that many of us can relate to this, and I say this with empathy and personal experience and a lot of tenderness for everyone who's been through this. If we did not have trustworthy authority figures in our lives when we were young, and we may go through life never feeling that any guide or parent figure, authority, teacher, mentor energy is trustworthy. We may find it very triggering to put ourselves in the hands of someone who says, trust me. What you're doing is not working, and I know you can't see it yet. So let me help you see it in a different way, and I'm going to show you what to do instead. That is such a vulnerable position to allow ourselves to be in. There is tremendous trust, two-way trust between a true mentor and a committed student, right? We really have to open ourselves up to being honest with each other. And it can be just as hard. I speak from my own experience. It can be just as hard to tap into that deep honesty as a mentor as it is to be able to open up to it as a student, because I don't want to make my students uncomfortable. I recognize how hard it can be to enter into this realm of trusting authority figures, right? And this is what happens when we open ourselves up to mentorship. We are saying, this person actually has more experience than me. They know things that I need to know. And I'm going to put myself in their orbit, right? So that I can truly be mentored. And so that I can have the benefit of being around someone who has walked the path that I want to walk, who has gotten the results that I want to get. That's really the only way we can really learn, We have to put ourselves in the orbit of people who have done it. Otherwise, it's just like an imaginary thing. It's like a pipe dream as opposed to an ambition. So mentorship is key. It is key in every aspect of life. We will circle it back to writing. If you don't trust authority, what happens to us as people is that we get very peer oriented. Maybe some of you can think back to your teen years when, it's sort of normal for teens to be a little, disdainful of authority figures, but teens are peer oriented. That's kind of developmentally appropriate to a certain extent. If you've parented a teen, you know that you've really got to sort of push against that, because of course teens still need a lot of parenting, right? But they're naturally going to orient themselves toward fitting in with their peers, right? So if you're peer oriented and you've had some trauma or disappointment or wounds about authority figures, you are going to tend to stay that way. And so what happens is what I see happening in the writing community a lot, which is that, again, I don't mean to be disrespectful about this, because I understand why it happens. Writers will happily take advice from random strangers in Facebook groups or on YouTube channels who have not actually accomplished much as writers themselves. They are at a peer level. They're equals. They're equally on the journey. They're just figuring it out. Maybe they're rather early on the journey. They will go to their peers and take advice from their peers far more readily than they will go to someone who has a lot of experience. They are more comfortable among like this peer authority structure, which is that, everybody's just got their opinion, right? And we can all say what we think, and that's a great way to share information. And listen, community is an incredible virtue. I love the idea of community. I cultivate community in the Path of Storyteller program. We have an amazing community. But we cannot also then say, well, I love the community and support of my peers, but I'm going to distrust and be cynical about expertise. I'm not going to actually believe in such a thing as expertise. And when somebody says, well, look, I actually have some experience in this, let me guide you. And even if it's a mentor that they've chosen, if you are oriented this way, the resistance is going to be so strong. You're going to feel like a teenager who's being scolded by an adult. I mean, you're going to click right back into that so fast. And what happens then? You still need guidance, but you're going to go to people who don't know any more than you do. Now, this can be such a self-perpetuating loop where people will just go to other people who don't know any more than they do, and they will create like whole belief systems, and they'll advise each other. And what I see happening, and it's very easy to see this happening because there's just a lot of these kinds of communities on social media, right? Is that they come up with lots of rules and regulations, and then they become kind of doctrine, and they'll start saying, well, that's not okay. This is not permitted, or everyone knows that, it becomes this like received wisdom of the amateurs. And I almost hesitate to venture into these communities because I'm like, I want to help, but also at this point, like they have formed a gang. Like they are like a gang of kids who've like, nope, these are the rules of our gang, And I feel like Officer Krupke wandering in, those of you who know West Side Story, saying, actually, guys, this isn't productive. What you've told yourselves, what you've convinced yourselves of, is not really productive. So I want to just kind of frame this, your relationship to authority figures, how you feel about the idea of expertise, whether you are willing to acknowledge that other people know more than you do about certain things. And this sounds very basic, but I ask you to look deep into your hearts and see if you yourself have been prone to, if asking for help at all, sort of asking for help sideways rather than seeking real mentorship. Again, if we don't feel that people who are really good at what they're doing will give us the time of day, we're never going to seek them out and ask them. So this sort of goes back to number one. I myself have been through this in my own development as a writer, particularly when I was quite young, because I had the great good fortune of kind of getting into the orbit of some really world-class talents. And they would have loved to help me. They would have helped me a lot more than I let them. But I was too shy and felt too unworthy to sort of go to them and ask and really cultivate them as mentors. So at any age, this is something that I want you to consider doing. Cultivate your mentors wisely. Cultivate your mentors with discernment. Don't be cynical about expertise. Don't be shy about asking the people who really can help you to help you. If you just keep going into these sort of conversations of people who don't know any more than you do, it can be very destructive. I've seen it happen like in critique groups that are not really disciplined. I've just seen writers waste so much time trying to please their peers by sort of taking counterproductive advice, and it becomes kind of a race to the bottom, right? Because at that point, everyone is just validating everybody else's lack of experience. Let's put it that way. All right. So that's the second one. Examine your relationship to authority. It might undergo some real transformation. I have talked in another video on this channel a little bit about how to find a good mentor. I will very quickly restate my sort of 3 rules of finding a good mentor here, and I've talked about this at more length elsewhere. Find someone who actually has the experience, who has walked the path that you want to walk. Okay. If you're studying fiction writing, you look for a mentor who's actually written books that you admire. Don't try to study fiction writing with someone who's never written a novel. There's so many screenwriters out there teaching writing, and novel writers are coming on all the time with these screenwriting books. Like, I'm not saying it's useless, but it's not really the mentorship you need, right? If your fiction writing teacher's never actually written or published a novel, it's a bit of a red flag. All right. So find someone who's actually walked the walk that you want to walk. Number 1. Number 2, find someone who can articulate the process in a way that interests you and makes sense to you. Some excellent writers work intuitively, and what they will tell you is to work intuitively. And the truth is, intuition is an important part of the creative process. But for most writers, working intuitively is what got you where you are. And now you need to have technique and have like a different kind of framework. So a framework that you can use intentionally. So, find a mentor who can articulate the process in a way that helps you. And the third thing, super important, please choose a mentor who is genuinely rooting for your success, because that is not always the case too. And anyone who's ever been in a toxic writing program knows what I'm talking about. All right, I'm not going to get too distracted by that, but it felt relevant to what we're talking about. All right, then. So the third category of self-examination, where you might find yourself really being changed by the journey of seeking mastery as a writer, is your relationship to the idea of ambition. This can be a really big one for many writers. I cannot tell you how often I see writers, or I've heard writers say, well, can I just write with a pen name because I don't want anyone to know it's me? Or all the time I see this said now, is it true that writers have to market their own books? Because if that's the case, I don't really want to do it. I don't do marketing. I'm just not interested in marketing my own books. It's like, really? You're not interested in marketing your own books? Are they terrible? You're embarrassed to talk about them? Are you proud of your work? Do you want people to buy them or know about them? Like, you see how like these ideas, they almost sound kind of like little noble excuses. Like, oh, I can't actually do marketing. It's like, well, how ambitious are you? Like, what is your goal in writing books? Do you want readers or not? What do you want? Like, what's holding you back, right? And this also comes into play sometimes when writers talk about the publishing process. We live in an era, of course, where writers have choices about how to publish their books. But I very often see writers saying, well, I know that I will never be chosen by an agent or a traditional publisher. So they don't even consider it as an option. They just assume I'm going to write my book, and it's mostly for me because I love to write. And then I'm just going to, indie publish it. I'll just put it up on Amazon and I will be a published author. And then those same writers will come back, a couple of months later saying, well, 4 people have purchased my novel and I'm heartbroken because nobody's reading it. And I worked on it for 5 years. And they realize at that point that they never gave themselves a chance to see if that book was worth anything in the marketplace. And now it's been independently published, which means that it's almost, I don't want to say impossible, but it's going to be super difficult, if not impossible, to get anyone to look at it because it's already been published. And it's not that they were so in love with indie publishing. Chances are they didn't even know what it was. These can be the same writers who say, I don't want to do marketing. It's like, well, you never should have decided to become a publisher then, right? Like, did you know what it meant to be a publisher? So this, like an unexamined relationship with ambition and what you want. What do you want to have happen? Do you want an agent? Do you want a 6-figure book deal with a big 5 publisher? What do you want? You want to be on a bestseller list? You've got to be brave enough to ask these questions. And some writers are like, oh, no, no, no. Like they're so self-effacing that they won't even ask these questions because there is a path from where you are to those outcomes. It's a hard path. It's a long path. There's a lot of work involved. But every day, people get agents. Every day, writers get deals with big publishers. Every day, there's a whole bunch of people on the New York Times bestseller list. They're there. You can see who they are. Their names are on the list. So this is not hoping to grow wings and fly. This is just setting your goals. What do you want to have happen with your books? If you don't know what you're aiming for, you are not going to hit the target by accident. So you have to really think about this. What is your relationship to ambition? Are you able to articulate your goals, even if you do not know how to achieve them? There's a great little saying about, well, I would love for this to happen, but I don't know how. I don't know how I would ever make that happen. And so therefore, I don't allow myself to wish for it. Ignore the how for now. I want everyone to remember this piece of advice. Ignore the how for now. It doesn't matter how. You can learn how. It's going to be a lot of work. But set your ambitions honestly, authentically. Again, think of the journey of personal transformation that might be involved with you deciding how much success you dare long for, how you define the outcome that you really want, not the one that you're willing to admit out loud, but the one that you really want. Okay? What's your relationship to ambition? All right, that was the third one. The fourth one, we are digging deeper today. We really are. The fourth category of personal transformation that being a writer, really pursuing mastery as a writer, is bound to stir up is, what is your relationship to discomfort? What is your relationship to discomfort? Now, how was writing uncomfortable? We sit in cushy chairs. We could put cushions behind us. We can get our coffee just right. We can get our laptop at just right. Like we can make ourselves comfortable, right? You guys know how uncomfortable it is. It can be so uncomfortable that our brains will, the minute we say, okay, it's my writing time. I set aside 90 minutes today to work on my book. Oh my gosh, the distractions, the desire to, check our email, to get a snack, to throw in a load of laundry so you can multitask so that something really constructive, this is what goes on in the backs of our brains, something really constructive can get done so that I'm not wasting time just because I'm writing. The laundry's getting done. Like, that you just create all of this stuff, this resistance to deal with the discomfort. So what is the discomfort of writing? Well, we could talk about that a lot. We have, but the discomfort of going on a journey to mastery as a writer has its own particular discomfort. So let me just, focus on that. It can be very uncomfortable to take feedback on our work. It can be very, very uncomfortable, even though we have gotten through these other hurdles. We've gotten to the point where we've maybe accepted mentorship and we still believe in ourselves enough that we've committed to some kind of program of development. We've been willing to admit to our ambitions, and we've accepted the need to let some expertise in the room so that we can actually learn things we don't already know, right? Like we've gone through all of that. Does that mean it's comfortable? That this process is comfortable? No, it's not comfortable for so many reasons. We have to be able to look at the way we write now and the way we've written in the past, and we have to be able to say, that isn't very good. I thought it was great. It was the best I could do at the time. And maybe I spent time querying and trying to shop some of those projects, right? And I showed them proudly to my colleagues in my critique group, and maybe you thought they were all that. And then you really start to train. You really start to try to level up. And the first thing that happens is everything that you learn, every time you learn something new, you have this cascade of retroactive shame for the 20 years that you spent doing it the wrong way and you just didn't know any better. And this sounds a little melodramatic, but this is actually the truth, right? It's one of the things that's a little tricky about writing, because it does often take us a while to get to the point where we say, okay, I'm not going to be able to figure this out myself. I'm not going to teach myself to write by ear. So we've got like a pile of stuff that we've written that's, baby pictures, to quote a great mentor of mine. It's just baby pictures. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but we may be middle-aged people with 20 years of baby pictures in the drawer. You see what I mean? Whereas if we were, I don't know, a 5-year-old who was just taking up the violin, we don't have any shame about it, because no one expects us to be any good. We don't expect us to be any good, right? We're just having fun in the moment of it. We don't have all the neurosis of all the time I spent revising this book that is now going to be in the dumpster, or that would need a complete overhaul if it were to ever be anything. Like, every time we learn something, there is almost like this grief of letting go of the way we used to do things, of all the hopes and dreams we may have invested in projects that we abandoned because we just didn't have the technique to finish them, to revise them properly. There's just a lot that goes on with learning. Learning is like embracing new stuff, but it's also letting go of old stuff. We don't layer our newfound writing techniques, our clarity about how stories are actually structured. We don't layer it at like icing and sprinkles on top of the cupcake of all of our old writing habits. We actually have to kiss our old writing habits goodbye a lot of the time. We're so used to doing it that way. So this is hard. This is why change is hard. It's really hard, right? It triggers all the stuff. So that's discomfort. Sharing our work with people can be uncomfortable for those of you who might be shy or unaccustomed to sharing your work, grieving the way you used to do things, being like both excited. And I've heard my students say this, like both excited when a light bulb comes on, like I finally get how to do this, but then also kind of upset. Like, why didn't anybody tell me this before? Why didn't anyone tell me the truth before? So I just noticed that Cheryl's here. Hey, Cheryl, I'm going to share this. Appreciation. Ignore the how for now. Love it. Yeah, that's a good one. Like, put it on a Post-it note. Cheryl, I imagine you'll remember this conversation because we had it in workshop. That there is that moment that you get to as a writer, when you start to learn stuff, or you get to this sort of tipping point of frustration, and you really say, like, if only somebody that knew that what they were talking about would tell me the truth about my work. And it's actually very challenging and rare to get that kind of input, to get that kind of feedback, because people for the most part are very nice and very accommodating and very enabling in a way. And the people who we ask for feedback don't know how to give it typically, unless they are true mentor figures, but they also want to be supportive, bless them. And so they might give us feedback like, oh, I like the first part. Or, it got really interesting when the dog entered. Meantime, you're like, well, what was wrong with the first 50 pages without the dog? They can't really tell you in a granular way. They can't tell you in a way that you can actually use. And it is really frustrating, And so we have the discomfort of true honesty from a mentor when we finally seek it. And then we also have the discomfort of saying, all that time, nobody was really telling me what they thought. And it's just really aggravating, right? So there's all kinds of discomfort. The change, understanding how much work is ahead, understanding how much time it might take to really figure all this stuff out, to get like a complete training, to really draft something that's good, to revise at the level that brings your work to like professional standards. There's just a lot of things that can be uncomfortable. We just got to stick with it. So your relationship to discomfort will get examined thoroughly. If you're the kind of person that tries to distract yourself from discomfort really, really easily, you're going to find yourself making a lot of snacks and doing a lot of laundry. So you might have to learn a different way of dealing with discomfort. All right. Now, the fifth one is the fifth of five. I've saved the juicy one for last, but I also find this one kind of exciting, and I hope you do too. The fifth thing that you're going to really have to examine and let be part of your journey of transformation when you embark on the road to mastery as writer is your relationship to being the main character of your own life. Now, this is one of those phrases that's kind of out there in the meme world, the zeitgeist of social media, like channeling that main character energy, and it's so charming and I love it. But there's something really deeply true about this. We call it, or I call it, the path of the storyteller. I don't call it, the path of the point of view or the path of the, dialogue. I don't call my program after the actual techniques that we're going to learn, because those you're going to learn. Like if you study with me, you're going to learn all these things. But at the core of what's going to happen as you go through this step-by-step process of learning all these things is you're going to go through all of this personal transformation, because you can't get there without doing it. You, in fact, the writer, become the main character in the story of your own coming of age as a writer. I hope that makes sense. You are the hero of this journey. And when you sign up for a real experience of change, when you stop sort of dabbling and grazing on different little bits and bobs of like half-informed writing advice, and you really say, nope, it's time for me to commit. I'm going to plunge in. I'm going to really go for this. You have now just volunteered to be the hero of the story of your own coming of age as a writer. And it's a thrilling journey. And guess what? You are going to go through all the things that the hero of any story must go through. You are going to begin your journey in like an unsustainable condition of wanting to write, of knowing you're not progressing, of not knowing where to go for help, like all of the things that we've already just described and talked about in this live stream. You're going to be that character. You're going to know there's a need for transformation. Maybe you won't know it, but the world is going to make sure you find out, quick. There's going to be some kind of straw that breaks the camel's back about it, and you're going to have to do something, and some form of mentorship is going to appear. Some opportunity to really go on this journey is going to appear. And just like the hero of a story, you may have to fight through a fair amount of resistance before you allow yourself to say, okay, yes, I'm signing up. I know this is going to be harder than I imagine. Probably if I knew how hard it was going to be, I wouldn't have the courage to begin. That is the quality of a hero at the beginning of any adventure. And you are going to go through that as well, right? But if you can get over it and say, yes, yay, the adventure begins, right? Hurrah. Well, not exactly. Yes, the adventure begins, and that's thrilling. But then you have to do the work. And that's where this issue of how do you feel about discomfort comes up. Because like the hero of any story, it's going to be a long, hard journey, and there are going to be many, many obstacles along the way. And you're going to figure something out, and then there's going to be something else to figure out. And you're going to figure something else out, and you're going to realize that the thing that you spent last year writing doesn't work at all. You didn't see it before, but now you can, because your level of discernment has increased. That's a great sign, because it means you're learning, but it's so uncomfortable, right? So these are the kinds of things that you're going to go through again and again and again. And, the amount of work that it takes to write a decent first draft is going to feel like, wow, I made it. That's like a midpoint turn. And then you realize, but now I've got to revise it because it still needs a lot of work. And it's just going to keep going and going. It's going to go on longer than you imagine that it could. This is just what it's like to be a hero in the second act, right? You are going to learn to hang into the struggle. You are going to learn to rely on your fellow travelers, just like the hero of a book does. You're going to learn that there are archetypal energies that are not going to be on your side. There are going to be, folks who are going to be discouraging, who are going to trigger your deepest anxieties about whether this is worth it, right? They're going to say, well, you're not making any money at it. How come you spend all this time trying to be good at it, right? They're going to articulate your absolute shadow energies, like your worst fears about what's going on here. And you're like the hero of a story. You're going to figure out how to deal with those negative energies, and you're going to have mentorship, and you're going to have like times of hilarity and celebration with your mates. I mean, just like any great story, right? You're going to have moments of feeling envious. You're going to have to really suck it up when you see somebody else getting the thing that you thought like you were next in line for, like, oh, so and so got an agent, I didn't get one yet. The whole human experience is going to be embedded in this journey of transformation. It's going to take time. And then you're going to get near what you think is the end, right? I finished my book. I revised my book. I got an agent. I got a publisher. The third act is here. We're just getting so close to that like happy fade out and typing the end on this journey. And you're going to see that it just opens up a whole new adventure, because now you're in a bigger playing field. You're in a relationship with your readers. You mean something in the community of readers. You mean something in the community of writers. But like the hero of a well-told story, everything that you've been through is now having an impact on the outside world, right? And so now you're part of that too. And that's an amazing feeling. And you may even, like the hero of a great adventure, decide eventually to become a mentor figure to other heroes just starting out their journey. Like, this is just all part of it. So this is what it's going to look like, folks. And in the process of living that journey of transformation yourself, you are going to be better and better and better at depicting that kind of transformation in the world of your stories, in the heart and soul and experience of the main character in the fictional tales that you devise. So guess what? Even this will make you a better writer. So you are going to walk the path of storyteller yourself. You're going to go on that journey of transformation yourself in the most personal way imaginable. And it's all going to end up on the page in a great way. So I just want you to know that the reward is going to be waiting for you. And, lots of rewards along the way. But it's really worth it. It's really going to be worth it. And I want you to know it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to aim high, to hold yourself accountable for being the best writer that you're capable of being, which I strongly encourage you to do. Don't settle for less than that. You're going to hang in, through all the struggles, through the second act. And it's going to be worth it. And you're going to make so many friends along the way. It's going to be so much fun. So that's we're coming up on time, so I'm going to try to wrap up here. But I mean, that to me is sort of what this real journey of transformation on a personal level that a writer will go through when they decide that they really want to take this seriously, that they want to be part of the community and legacy of storytellers. And I believe it's worth it. And I know it's a great life. And I know it's going to be worth it in the end, but it's going to be fun and worth it every step of the way alongside all the struggles. So I encourage all of you to be brave heroes, to step into that main character energy and be that main character of your own journey of change. And I'm going to just take a moment now to look at the comments. So if anybody wants to add something, or if you have a question, now is a great time to do it, because it usually just takes a minute for them to pop up where I can see them. Let me go back. And Simone is here. How lovely to see you, Simone. Let me just share your comments. Simone agrees with Hillary that it is step-by-step learning from the craft of storytelling, writing, and then production, publication, and marketing. Absolutely. It's all part of the journey of getting those stories out of our heads and into the hands of our readers. And I'm glad, Simone, that you kind of put production, publication, and marketing on the table as topics for discussion, because, my definition of publication is simply that. It's simply the work is ready for the reader. And now what needs to be done to get the work in the hands of the reader? And I hope that everybody out there who's got longings to write, or is, working hard at their craft as a writer, is just remembering that there's a lot of self-expression involved and a lot of pleasure involved in being a creative artist of all stripes. but that reader is out there waiting for your book. You really have a relationship with your reader that until you have readers, feels a little abstract. But the minute you have them, you realize, oh, I'm doing this all for them. And it's really, it's a moment of change and awareness in your journey. So that's really great. And Simone adds, the endless learning experience is challenging, frustrating, but ultimately satisfying, truly life-changing. I think we all agree with you, Simone. That's beautifully said. And I love that you put the endless learning experience. There's this great phrase that you hear nowadays, the lifelong learner, that being a lifelong learner is really one of the keys to having a satisfying life, to have a growth mindset, to always be curious and open to new ideas. And I have embraced that as a value in my own life. And I really hope that that the rest of you out there will do the same. It is so great. And Simone shares also that she is marketing and she thought would hate it. Here, I'll bring this up. It's hard, but also thrilling to get a nice review. It's been quite fascinating learning. See, this is the attitude of a lifelong learner. This is terrific, Simone. You've inspired people who might have been like, marketing, I don't do it. It's just something else you can learn to be good at, and it will support your work. Cheryl shares, transformation is gold, and it does require real mentorship. My experience is I can't do it alone. And why should you? Why do we get this idea that it's somehow better if we figure things out on our own? There's that phrase, about reinventing the wheel. Like, you don't actually need to reinvent the wheel. And if there's anything that we don't need to reinvent the wheel about, it's story, because story is ancient. It's so ancient. It's such a well observed part of the way humans think and process life and our own experiences and all the rest. And Anne shares, I really appreciate the hero's journey because it's something of a comfort to know that my obstacles don't mean I'm on the wrong path. Yes, Anne, that's so smart. That's just the road of meaningful transformation. What Anne shares here is really a boon to everybody. When you hit an obstacle, or if you're uncomfortable, or there's some challenge that pops up in your way, it doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. In fact, it's usually a pretty good sign that you're on the right one. Because if you stay in your comfort zone for your whole life and never experience obstacles, that's just a sign that you've stopped growing, that you've stopped attempting to move outside of your comfort zone. So we need to kind of lean into discomfort. It's the only way. It's the only way to grow and change. All right. Let's see what else. I'm going to wrap up. We've got some other lovely comments. Simone, these are just too delicious not to share. So we'll wrap up with these last two comments from Simone. Simone writes and researches literary historical fiction. Oh, how lovely. I'd love to know more about that, Simone. And says, I grow aware of the timelessness of the human experience and mine, life-changing. That alone, that sense of connectedness is so life-changing. And I love that you bring it up. And I also want to say that sense, part of pursuing excellence as a writer, is that you do start to understand your role in the lineage of storytellers. And as Simone says, it is the timelessness of the human experience expressed. That is what story is. It connects us. Story connects us to our ancestors. It connects us to those yet to come. I mean, the stories that we still love and resonate with, some of them were told thousands of years ago. And when we think about being part of that lineage, and the stories that we tell might speak to people who are not going to be born yet for many years to come, our stories can and often do, if we're lucky, last longer than we do. And that is a profound thing. And I'm going to end with this last beautiful comment. Writing is where I'm happiest, but also a bit lonely. It is, Simone. Listening to you is a treat. Your voice and smile are contagious. Oh, I feel so pleased to hear that. Writing a life-changing experience is thought-provoking. Well, there's no better way to conclude than that lovely comment. So thank you for it. Thank you all for your participation in this live stream. I've so enjoyed talking about this topic and reading your comments as well. And I hope that, I send you all the courage and all the mentor energy I can through this little screen. If you want to, stay connected and you're not already on my mailing list, don't forget about that. Let me bring the link up for you. Don't forget about that free download. You could always help yourself to that, and that will put your email address on my mailing list. Of course, you can always unsubscribe if you don't like getting emails, but this is a way that we can get to know each other better and stay connected. So this is 30 writing prompts that do follow the path of a hero's journey and story structure, and you can enjoy that at your leisure. If you're new to the YouTube channel, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's also great. You'll get notified when I go live, which is most Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time. If there's something you want me to talk about in a future live stream, just leave it in the comments. I love your suggestions, and I would love to talk about the things that you are thinking about as well. All right, gang. I will look forward to seeing you next time. Next week, if you're interested in the Path of the Storyteller program, make sure you're on my email list before then, because I'm going to be sending out invitations for people to learn more. And I would really love to have you in my beautiful community and serve as your mentor if you're ready for one. Okay. I will see you next week. And until then, happy writing.